Greetings, fellow travelers, explorers, independent thinkers, and seekers alike, and welcome to The Nexus. On today's show, we have recurring guest, brother, and cousin in the cosmos, Jeff Harmon, the cosmological consultant to the astronomical events that occur in cycles within cycles. And boy, are we having some cycles and cycles now, right? We have eclipses, we have retrogrades, we have asteroids, we have pandemics and riots. Oh my. Let's dig into these and see what the heavens have to say, what the astrological and cosmological alignments of the cosmos are creating and adding to these interesting events. You know the routine. Grab your favorite adult libation, find that comfy spot, close your eyes, and journey with us as we try to sort out the metrics in the matrix, the nuggets of knowledge, the informatica, and those things that are materializing in front of our very eyes. And welcome to the Nexus Nextcast for June 4th, 2020. In case you didn't know what day it was on a calendar, or even what day it is of the week, it is Blur's Day, which is the 8th day of the 9th month of the year 2020, which lasts for 465 days. Sure seems that way, innit? But, you know, there's so much going on. There's so much out there that needs to be looked at. And one of the themes that I've been working with and on over the last sequestration has been this idea of listening on all frequencies. Because at the end of the day, that is what the universe and the cosmos is made of. All of it is based on frequencies. There's a lot of frequencies out there. And they come in all shapes and forms. They manifest both invisibly as well as materially. And when we run into things like that and we try to figure out what is going on, what's out there, the one guest that we always have on, the cosmological consultant, Jeff Harmon. So Jeff's back. We're going to cover a lot of things from one side of the spectrum to the other. And it's going to be one of those just sit back, relax, make sure you've got your favorite adult libation and you are comfy and just listen to the amazing things that we're going to take a look at and try to figure out just what is going on. So let's just get into it, shall we? Welcome back, Jeff. Thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me, Robert.
It's always a pleasure to have you on and try to figure out what is it that's going on in the heavens. What is it in the stars? What is it in the cycles within cycles that are going on? And holy cow, are there more cycles converging now than ever before?
Oh yeah, I got to tell you, this whole pandemic. Of course, a lot of doctors I talk to call it the scamdemic, but a lot of doctors. I actually have a lot of clients who are really intelligent doctors, and they've all said, Jeff, the numbers aren't adding up. I'm sure you and I have discussed this. The ones that try and go vocal get pulled off of YouTube. I know that certain news stations have had them on, which is great that they did. But the whole pandemic thing was just spot on with the Kalasarpa yoga. And I remember saying here on a number of shows, you might have been one of them, several other people, I said, watch what happens right at the end of May. I remember right around the 27th, 28th, it'll break. However, we got Venus going retrograde, and it did break. I mean, even though there's still a lot of people running around with masks on. Yeah, and I would say, okay, great. But I don't. I drive a motorcycle without a mask. And I just love to do it because I'm with George Carlin. The immune system is going to get strengthened if you get around stuff. A lot of doctors say the same thing, but yeah, I love George Carlin on germs. Remember, you and I were sharing
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he nailed it. And what was that? 20 years ago,
Yeah, he sure did.
almost. Yeah.
And it was probably 20 years ago. But I'm amazed at how the astrology or the astronomy just nailed this. And right when George Floyd, which, you know, it's tragic that that happened. But then I don't know if you heard on Fox News, they just came out saying that this doesn't add up, that it's very possible these guys work together. You know, I don't know if you saw the thing on
Oh yeah.
Jesse Waters.
Hmm.
This is in my opinion, but and I've heard several rumors about this. I really haven't looked into it, but I can tell you with the astrology at least. But I can tell you Venus retrograde was known as Lucifer falling, and Venus retrograde was exact yesterday. In other words, it lined up with the sun. It's called an inferior conjunction, where Venus retrogrades in between the Earth and the sun, which means inferior. When it's on the other side of the sun, that's called superior. Well, the inferiors were always the ones that caught the attention of many, many astrologers and astronomers. In particular, the Mayans used to hide the king during that time. They would actually take the king and switch him out and with someone else, and they would board up the windows, you know, and they would block up the chimneys. Kind of sounds familiar, except now we're boarding up windows and blocking up chimneys for the rioters. But
Right. Well,
nonetheless,
doesn't that kind of fit into, Trump having to go down and check out the bunker over the weekend, right?
it was bizarre. And right on the third, there's still violence, but not nearly as bad as it was. And I
Hmm.
think by the sixth, see, we're also in a sustained. See, whenever Venus conjuncts the sun, that the Lucifer falling metaphor came from when Venus went retrograde, it was going into the alignment or combustion of the sun. And that's when many heinous acts were committed. And this is exactly what happened with this whole situation with George Floyd. And what happened is right when Venus conjoined the sun yesterday, you could start to feel the air come out of the balloon a little bit.
Hmm.
Not that, you know, people aren't walking around protesting still, but we're not seeing the violence and the intensity that we did. Okay, it's a little bit here and there, but it's
But
way
isn't
better.
now, Jeff, isn't that a little bit analogous to the air coming out of the virus? I mean,
Yeah.
right as this thing
Oh, it
was
did.
just,
It did.
evaporating, now we've got a new reason to get wound up and you look at it and you go, okay, so you've got people, you're telling people that don't open your business or we will arrest you, but you can go protest and we're not going to arrest you. It's like,
Can you believe it?
and then you've
Can
got the prison population that was let
yeah,
out.
just
The
releasing.
timing. I mean, you look at all these things, and just from a timeline perspective, and you kind of go, "What's going on here?"
And that's why I like talking with you, Robert, is because when you take this up to 100,000 feet and you look down and you say, okay, what is really going on? The Saturn Pluto conjunction, I've been talking about this for probably the last 10, 15 years. Everybody, you know, what do you think of the Mayan calendar and Nostradamus's predictions? I said, not much. Not that I think Nostradamus is completely wrong. I just think he may be have interpreted wrong. The quatrains are very hard to figure out in terms of timing, and everyone speculates. But I think it's right now, and this is what I've been saying. This is the time frame. The Saturn-Pluto conjunction invariably brings great change to the world. Why this one was so much more strange, weird, and unpredictable was because many astrologers have noted that the lunar mansions of they're called Mula and Arudra. Now, some astrologers will pronounce that as Ardra, and I'll show you this here on the screen. This is really cool. I'm going to go to a screen share, and then I'm going to come over here and show you this little diagram, and you can see here, if I when I get to it, right there. I put a little picture here of the Earth just for clarity. So the Earth is here in the center, and of course, this is the Moon. And again, I always joke around with the astronomers. I don't care how much they polish the lenses on their telescopes, they're never going to see the zodiac. Why? Because it's not physically there.
Hmm.
It is there spiritually. These are known as the nakshatras, which is kind of a strange word that just means the 27 lunar mansions. They are sidereal, they're not tropical. And what's interesting is every 18 and a half years, the moon's north and south nodes move into these two lunar mansions called Anuruddha, or Ardra if you like, and Mula. In fact, if I zoom in, you can see that's Mula. Some people spell it Moola, others spell it that way. This is the way I go by the older Brihat or Shastra methods. So long story short, whenever that happens, weird stuff on the planet happens. I.e., AIDS broke out on this. Weird stuff in the 50s. JFK was killed on this. There was all kinds of weird stuff that happened. I think it was over in the Korean War. The nuclear weapon was detonated on this. The pandemic of 1917 lined up with this. The Great Plague in Europe. I went back, and I'm not being exact here, but every time, every 18 and a half years, these line up, we get this strangeness. Well, I think when you look at what happened this year, we didn't just have a few shops closed. We had the whole world. It's like somebody pulled the switch and said, Earth shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking to people, Robert, in the jungle, like shamans who told me, Jeff, I can't get a shuttle down the Amazon freaking river right now. I mean, this is in Colombia, this is in Peru, and different places, Australia, Bhutan, India, Europe. I mean, it just everywhere got shut down, everywhere except a few countries. And this was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And right now, we just, like you said, we jumped from COVID-19 to all of a sudden, whammo, now everybody's running around rioting.
Right.
And I can tell you, if the astrology is right, this is clearly being led by Antifa. Of course, we're seeing this on the news. Everyone sees it. This has clearly been an effort. And I hate to say this, and I'm not going to say any countries, but I really think that we've had Antifa around since just a little after World War II. And they are clearly backed by communistic, or you could say one world order motives. Call it which you will.
Let me jump in on that, because it's always one of the things that I have found in my exploration, trying to figure out what's going on, and in doing that is this idea of what I'm calling the informatica, which is nothing more than the nut of whatever the actual data is. And when you look at and one of the other terms that's being thrown around, has been thrown around for decades, and it was designed to be thrown around, but it's got a whole new set of legs now, is conspiracy theorists. So you have, the whole idea of these conspiracies, have been around for a long time. And when you break down the word, again, going back to the whole point of getting to the nut of whatever the data is looking at what is that. If you look at the word conspire in its original construct and what it means to come together with an agreement to go do something. It's not necessarily negative or positive. That's whatever the intent is of those who have come together and inspired to do something together. So to me, I look at this and I say, conspiracy theories, it needs a name change. They're storylines. To me, it's just another narrative in the in the entire plethora of stories that are out there. So if I look at it as a storyline, and I try to look at the nuggets within the storyline, I try to figure out what they're trying to make, what they're trying to spin, what is the curated narrative. Right now, there's so many to choose from. You can't make this stuff up. It is simply something that is obviously manifesting not only on its own through the cosmological cycles, but also there's a whole bunch of piggybacking and hijacking, and people who are, you've this deep state, white hat, black hat, all this stuff, they are, in my opinion, definitely afoot and in play with the cosmological cycles. I think some of them are aware, have been aware, and are very, shall we say, they are adepts at this knowledge of these energy cycles.
There's some that are very adept, you bet.
And they saw and they knew this was coming. I think there's another group.
Well, there's more coming yet.
Yeah.
There's more coming yet.
I think there's another group that also was aware of some of these energies and trying to take advantage of them. But they weren't as smart as the other group who also knew. Because when I look at the storyline and I look at the nuggets and how these things are falling out, it's like, okay, we had the most amazing global economy. Everything was growing. You had, even in places where there's strife, where there's, the EU, for example, just look at the European Union. There has been one cultural and social change occurring after another in each one of the individual countries. The financial systems, all of that has been going through a major upheaval. I think that part of this planetary pause was to get people out of the way, make them go home, go to your room, you go contemplate your navel lint, have a think, and that's another show that I've done. What I think is going on is called the Great Rethink. Everybody's had to rethink everything, but just game out the scenario of forget about all of the political and ideological components. Look at the actual events that have occurred. You had everything just cranking, stuff going great. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, this invisible enemy shows up, one that can kill you potentially, or at least that's the narrative. And it still has nefarious beginnings. It apparently wasn't anything like what we were told.
Right, exactly. Well, and the other interesting thing I didn't mention is the astrology showed every planet was in between the north and south nodes. I want to show you this because this is kind of a nice visual. You and I were talking about the eclipse. Here, if I show you this correctly, this is a Vedic astrology chart as soon as it comes up. There we go. So if I go to a time map tool, this is a little complex, but it's a great way to show it since we have the wonderful abilities of computer sharing here. So if you watch, I'm going to go backwards. You can see the dates right here where I'm tracing. Mm-hmm. What we want to watch here is notice where the chart is right now. This is, by the way, the eclipse that's coming up on June 20th. You can see the title there. Mm-hmm. And this is a weird eclipse. This is going to add two more things. But if we go back here just to the end of May 27th particularly, or if we just go a couple of days before that, look at this. You can actually see right there every single planet. This is the moon's north node where eclipses happen. This is the moon's south node right there. So that's called Rahu and Ketu, or you could just say it's the mathematical points where the sun and the moon and the earth line up. So all the planets were in between that. Guess when that happened? Right at the end of February, when the US and global media went ballistic and everyone, like you said, was told to go to their room. Okay, well, guess what? And this is what I was saying. We had, at the end of April, the lunar mansion of Ardra left, the north node left the lunar mansion of Ardra, is the more proper way to say it. So right at the end of April, a lot of doctors started coming out and saying, hey, this isn't adding up the way they're saying. You know, we built all these hospitals, ships around, and yet nobody's really in them. And I've had literally doctors tell me, Jeff, if we write down in the hospital, I have one lady, she's in charge of 18,000 people in a huge hospital network. She says, we write down 3,000 if we say flu. We write down, I think it's 18,000 or 19,000 if we write COVID. And guess what? If we get to put them on a ventilator and they die, 38,000. So is there any incentive to not write down the flu? And I'm not saying COVID-19 didn't happen. What I'm saying is I'm going by the professionals telling me, hey, the numbers don't add up at what they say. And why did the two governors of the most populated states be sending people to nursing homes that weren't even facilitated? So a lot of nefarious stuff goes on when these Kalasarpa yogas happen. Kalasarpa yoga is a strange word for all the planets in between this. Well, watch what happened. George Floyd gets killed, okay, and the moon crosses the north node on the 25th, and right after that, mayhem breaks out between the 27th and 28th. right when Mercury crosses. But then Venus went retrograde. So Venus is retrograding right now. And then what's going to happen? Mercury, we have this eclipse on the 20th, but Mercury goes retrograde on the 17th of June. I think we're going to see this summer be a boat ride. A lot of people have said some of this is to obfuscate the fact of what's really going on with the Durham Bar investigations and many of the hearings that are about to happen.
Well, it kind of fits not only the narrative, but if you look at, again, don't look at it, to me, I just don't think about it from a conspiracy. Yeah, is there that going on? Of course. I mean, that's going on all day long, all over the place, whether you realize it or not. But it's a storyline, and when you look at what's happened, there is, and it's kind of interesting because some of these conspiracies or storylines have wild extremes on who and what and what's been going on. And they have, when they first come out, there's a bunch of, the whole idea of data is credibility, right? Is there provenance? Can you validate that data? And some of these you look at and you go, whoa, man, I don't know what you're smoking, but that's a great story.
Yeah.
But you see all the holes. And then as time goes along, little nuggets start showing up that fill in those holes, and you go, now this is starting to get a little bit more credible. So real quick, I want to go back to, because I've heard a lot about the north and south nodes. It seems to be on a lot of tarot as well as astrological.
It's always been there. The nodes are where eclipses happen. They're very, very karmic. They bring deep karmic changes to the world. Mm-hmm. In fact, the reason we have eclipses, like we're going to have this eclipse on the 20th of June, we get eclipses all the time. What's interesting is that's where the sun and the moon and the earth align. So it either occults the sun on a new moon or it occults the moon on a full moon. Right. So it's just where the ecliptical paths line up, and they're very powerful.
Now, and I'm just going to toss this in on the table. We'll take it another time. But when those alignments happen, if we really do have a hollow moon with some folks in the middle of it, I mean, don't you think they would take advantage of that energy pattern? Right?
Well, that's a good one. Actually, I have a lot of really interesting ancient documents that talk about souls. They actually say in the astral worlds on the other side that the moon is full when it's new here and it's new when it's full here. Isn't that interesting? In other words, it's reverse. Yeah, when it's full here, it's new there. When it's full there, it's new here. You see? So it's reversed. I hope I'm saying it correctly. The idea.
Yeah.
They're opposite. We have a new moon here, it's full there. And we have a full moon here, it's new there. So, and it's kind of interesting stuff. I always love that album by Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, and it had an eerie kind of morbid undertone to it about life, and that always struck me. Remember when that came out, and just an incredible record.
Oh yeah.
And
let's kind of wrap up the Corona thing, because I mean there's all kinds of other stuff it's intertwined with it, but what did the charts say?
It's a great fire drill. It's a great fire drill because in the future, we know that all we have to do is send out some professional with his wand and his cone hat and just say, Simon says. And, I'm not saying COVID wasn't real. What I am saying is I think it was, from every source I hear, it's way overblown. We all know that. The astrology showed it would have been a time something like this really weird would have happened. Very, very severe. One of the things people keep asking me, will it come back? Well, here's interesting information. Let's take a look at that, because I have something I can add to that. I say no. And the reason I say no is, remember when the North Node was in Arudra and Mula, and that actually happened at last fall. That was the latter part of September of last year. So I think this thing was manifest probably sometime in October, November, well underway in China. Yeah. And they buried it. That's my opinion. And that seems to be what a lot of people agree with. Secondly, the north node left of Rudra, see, they move backwards. They go up, they move backwards through the zodiac. And what's interesting is Ardra left at the end of April. Well, guess what? Mula leaves September 20th of this year. So I don't think it's going to come back. I really don't. And if it does, they're just telling us it does. Again, I've heard, so many people tell me stories for years of how some of these elite would like to wipe out, 5 billion people, and we only need 2 billion, right? And it just makes you
500 million according to Georgia Guidestones, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I know a lot of people are worried that they're shining up a vaccine right now with full complete mind control microchips in them, or nanochips, and that may not be actually that wrong. I think that's the intention. Will that happen? I tend to lean towards no. I actually asked an interrogation about that, and my take is, if I'm reading the chart right, I don't think they're going to pull it off. They may someday, but not right away. I tell you, I really get nervous for my son and your kids down the line, because I think Trump's going to get back in this year, and I don't think he'll ever sign into law mandatory vaccination for this.
No,
he's already said he won't.
Yeah, that's not how he rolls, and and that's that we'll get into the whole election thing as well. But I agree with you. I don't think that. I'll just give you my summary of what I think happened here. I think there was bioengineering. I think there was intent to create something along the lines of at least a weaponized type of virus. I think that when you look at the storyline of the deep state and the black hat, white hat, and all the Q and all that stuff, I think that there were people who found out about it or knew about it, hijacked it before it was completed. It was still semi-released because there wasn't enough controls. There was basically a boatload of incompetence around the board with all the storylines involved. It escaped. It had some kind of an effect that was more localized and concentrated, but it wasn't handled well by China. It wasn't handled well by the professor who was caught working with Wuhan, and one of the interesting things about his background and what he was doing, he was focused on nanotechnology, and there were a number of people who were involved along those lines in various organizations that probably had some kind of input. But as I said, I think that it was something that was being engineered. They were trying to weaponize it. They lost control. It slipped out. Control was regained. But one of the interesting things about the nano piece, Richard Hoagland did some fascinating research where he looked at the individual microscopic viruses. So he took all of the COVID, the SARS, Ebola, and all that, and he compared the microscopic images of these viruses. COVID-19 was the only one of all the ones that he looked at where when you look at the virus, you'll see it's a ball, and then it's got spores that come off of it, right? And those are the protein stems that attach to the cells that allow it to get in and start to begin its process. The end of the spores on the COVID-19 is in sacred geometry in the form of a tetrahedron. It's the only virus that has a tetrahedral end at the end of the spores. What's interesting about that is that over at MIT, they've been doing work on working with brains and being able to use frequencies to influence the brains. The frequencies and the harmonics that they use are in tetrahedral form. So you start hearing all these storylines about 5G and being able to kick off different pathogens with radio frequencies, and you go, oh, well, this data kind of lines up with that. Was that possibly something that's going on? I think that it probably, or at least potentially did and does, and I think that this whole COVID thing is a dry run for a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, it's a fire drill. It's a test. Yep, that's what I got to, and I think you're right about that. And that's interesting stuff on Hoagland. I met Hoagland a while back. It was a number of years ago. I think it was with Jim Delatoso. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, interesting research. I didn't know that. That's really great.
Yeah, and when
the thing I can say is the astrology just mirrored this to the T. I mean, it was absolutely.
well, and that's
It was
why I
like,
wanted to bring this up
yeah.
because what you're saying about the way in which the different energies and the chaos is coming in, there does seem to be forensic, tactical information that when individually you wouldn't think about it anything other than, well, that's interesting. But again, when you look at the storyline and you start plugging these pieces into that storyline, you go, some of those 5G, and the thing that really pisses me off about this 5G narrative is people keep saying it's 5G technology. That's not what it is. 5G is fifth generation. It's the tech stack within that generation that is where people need to be looking at. And it's anything in the 60 gigahertz millimeter range going up to 100. That's where the real issue is, and it's the attenuation, it's the amplification. Those are things that people need to be focused on. Deployment thereof, I mean, I saw a map of 5G deployment around the world, and they overlaid it on the coronavirus. And you go, it's not happening. There doesn't seem to be the correlation of the 5G rollout and the infection rate and death rate of the COVID-19. So just to wrap that up, I think the COVID-19, it was an attempted fail, and it was based on incompetence.
I don't think it's coming back right away.
And that's why it's not coming back, in my opinion, because it doesn't have the legs, right?
The astrology shows it. What I do see is, I think, and I've been saying this for a long time, I think we're going to see a lot more trouble with indictments coming up here. This is going to be a roller coaster ride into, see, we've got Mars going retrograde right on. It's like a collage of things that are happening this year. And I think this happens a lot throughout history. I think why this is so more pronounced is the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction that happens on the winter solstice. Now, a lot of astrologers are in agreement and disagreement with what I'm about to say. Saturn and Jupiter conjoin in a tropical zodiac, and some use the sidereal. I use them both. I look at both of them. This is happening in the tropical zodiac, in the sign of Aquarius, right in the first degree. So when it happens in tropical signs in the first degree, I find, going back, that this is very, very powerful. And this hasn't happened for 240 years where we've switched triplicities. The last time, triplicity means earth, air, fire, and water. They've switched before, but they bounce around in like triplicities. So this is an air sign, which is, I think, is going to usher in a technology age unlike we've never seen. Technology is going to exponentially advance. And like you were just saying, I really think we're going to see, if nefarious controllers get a hold of the advanced technology that's out there, it's going to be very dangerous to the human race. Some of these Satanists, their little virtual paradise is on the horizon if they succeed at it. I don't think they will. I see things tumultuous, and yet really I have optimism. And I know that sounds kind of juxtaposed. But when I look at the United, I can tell you the next president, and I think it's going to be Trump, is got a real basket of issues to deal with. It's not going to be easy. The United States has a Pluto return that's happening 3 times in 2022. Right this next year, we have Saturn conjuncting the nation's Pluto, meaning the birth chart of the United States. And I don't care which birth chart astrologers use, it's going to be happening 3 times next year. The biggest thing is we also have in Vedic astrology something called Sati Sate going on. Sati Sate, and you have that going on. You and I were just talking about that with you. If you look at, this is the United States Sibley chart. It's the one I use. I find it's pretty good. You can actually see here, Saturn is in the sign before the moon. It'll take a minute here. For some reason, the computer is lagging.
There we go.
But
Gotcha.
there it goes. Okay. So you can see here, this is the US Sibley chart. And you can see Saturn, which takes about 28 and a half years to go around, is transiting the sign before the United States' moon. Now, that's always a really trying time. And basically, it's about 7.5 years long. So this is going to continue again for until about 2027. So 2026. So we clearly have a lot of challenges going on. And I think, you know, we've heard these statements like deep state, you know, the rogue. I really think it's communism. I really do. I hate to say it. I think it's been eroding this country for a long time, and it acts like communism. I think the smartest thing that ever got declared was Antifa being a terrorist organization, because that's going to allow the full power of the intelligence and military to be unleashed against them. And these dudes, I mean, the stuff they're doing is horrible. Absolutely horrible. And that's what caused a lot of these riots. I mean, that's all over the internet, and it's certainly all over some of the news.
Well, so let me put my 2 nickels in on that. I
Yeah.
think that, you know, and to me, going back to the whole idea of listening on all frequencies, there are cycles within cycles, and you and I have talked about this many times for hours and hours, about how the different things that happen throughout history and up until, you know, Descartes and the Enlightenment and so forth, you know, nothing was done without astrology being consulted. You know, if from anybody in a position of power or responsibility or both. I think that the cycle that there's a cycle completing of which these people, entities, whether off-world or on-world or whatever, have been, they've had control for several centuries. They are bloodline, they are familial, they are connected in various and sundry ways. And the energy and the cycle that they existed in, that they controlled, that they pushed, that they manifested, by itself is coming to an end. They know it. They are on anybody who's gone through a power cycle, whether, you know, personal, business, or whatever. You can, if you're paying attention, you can tell when it's rising up, and you can tell when it peaks, and you can tell when it falls off. And that's just the natural cycle of the energy of the cosmos. I think that I think the energy that has facilitated these, the pedophiles, the reptilians, the nefarious rulers of controlling everything, the energy in that cycle is coming to an end. Most of them know it. They're not happy about it. Why would they be? They're flailing about. They're throwing anything they can that they've got left before they go, and it's contributing to this mass cultural chaos that we're seeing. Now, I think that the folks that are really at the top of this, or behind it, however you want to look at it, those are the ones that are in that narrative and that storyline of deep state, black hat, white hat group. Those guys were I think that they really thought that they would be able to get past the end of the cycle, survive, and continue into the next, and continue their nefarious activities and so forth.
They
still can. But I think that the other side of the energy, the yin and the yang, if you will, that is really supposed to be here for this next cycle of extremely positive energy, I think those guys are a little bit smarter. They're a little bit more in tune. They seem to be a little bit more connected. And there seems to be, at least from my perspective, there's a silent majority of them. And let me just go off on a little tangent here for a quick second. When you look at the ideologies that are typically defined and curated into the right and to the left, right? What we have out in our narrative today. You have the right, which is they're essentially traditionalists, they're nationalists, they're populists, they're patriots, they're conservative. They have this sense of being accountable and responsible for oneself. And as long as they're doing that and taking care of their own little group, they don't give a damn what anybody else is doing. As long as what everybody else is doing isn't infringing on their own space and doing their own thing. So, and they're traditionally much more open minded, which is completely opposite of the narrative you hear being spewed by the media and the people who are trying to curate and keep a narrative. You go to the left, and this is where you have your neo-lib, progressive, Saul Alinsky kind of mentality, where that's the progressive agenda that seems to be, it got its latest legs from under Wilson, and they have had spits and spurts of trying to implement this control agenda, this trying to get everybody into a groupthink. They've gotten into the academia, they've gotten into the establishment and the media and the and even in the corporate in some ways. But for the most part, they've infiltrated the societal narrative through education into the media, into as much as they can, and it has had a profound effect over the last 20 to 30 years. We see that, I think, now spilling out into the culture. We see that in our social fabric and the discourse. And what's fascinating to me is that it's crumbling on its own.
And that's just about the cycle of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions and Saturn-Pluto conjunctions.
Yeah, the 28-year deal, right?
Well, the 28, and then Saturn-Pluto is a cycle of somewhere between 35 and 38 years.
Right.
Yeah,
so
it ebbs and flows.
So there is correlation again in the metrics, in the matrix, of a set of frequencies, cycles within cycles, that are manifesting right in front of us. If you just take the nuggets and you say, what does it look like? And then you take the frequencies and the cycles and you overlay those onto the nuggets, you go, well, damn, look at that. Just like you're saying, right? So I think that what's happened is this previous energy cycle is ending. A new energy cycle is beginning. The war between, let's just call it the good and evil for now. Make it simple. The good and the negative, positive and negative. The negatives, it just can't. It's falling apart under its own weight because it's losing energy. It's losing its cycle and it's going out.
I think it's really good and evil. I really do. I have to say, when I look at things, this is a chart you and I have spoken about before. And I love this chart here because it kind of parallels, right, what you're saying. Let me come to this here. And I love to show this during readings that I do with people because basically what this shows here is you can see whatever your concept of God, divinity is, and everyone has a different viewpoint of that. But you could see it's above all creation. If you look, Earth is way down there, see? Mm-hmm. So what I love is when you look at this here, it's really showing that the firmaments, the heavens, don't start until hundreds of dimensions below. This is called divinity. They say there's literally 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions in each one of these, almost 100 dimensions. And then you have the same thing here. This Braya is creation. So it's way down here in the Yetziratic world. These are the heavens. This is the rotating galaxies by some theologies that are certainly in the ancient rabbinical texts and also, I would say, in the ancient Chaldean, Egyptian creational models. And it's a great way to look at things. So Yetzirah means formation. So there could be 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions in each one of those, which is beyond comprehension. The Milky Way could be way down here in our little solar system on the speck edge. And we all know what these guys are. These are the evil fallen spirits. And the stuff you were mentioning before, Robert, where you talk about this horrible stuff going on with Satanism, sacrificing and trafficking And a lot of the stuff we see and war in general is very, it'd be nice if we didn't have war, but we do have war. And,
Well, isn't that a
I
natural?
really believe,
That's a natural part of the cosmos. I mean, it seems.
but certainly the natural part of this one,
Yeah.
I don't know, natural part of all of them. I mean, I don't know. I mean, who could ever say? But where I'm going with all this is that we all seem to be spiritual beings having a physical experience. And what's interesting about astrology is when I do, readings and such, and we look at my own chart or other people's charts, it's amazing at how accurate it is. So the timing on this COVID-19 was just mind-bogglingly accurate. The timing on this thing with this whole rioting and George Floyd thing was amazing. And it's now starting to quiet a little bit. You watch, Mercury's going to go retrograde, and then we're going to see after the 6th, which is 2 days from the time we're recording today, the 6th of June, I'll bet this is going to start to cool off. And it's already there. I mean, when you look at the mobilization of the National Guard, even though they haven't used them too much, I think it was really, I've heard the Insurrection Act could be enacted, or it may I think it has been enacted. I think Trump enacted it. And then also the fact they can go after Antifa. This will start to taper off. It really will. It's going to go bye-bye. They charge the officers. Everybody's happy. And I think we're going to now see the pages turn to the next roller coaster ride. What? The political scene, the indictments. I think we're going to see a lot of it start to happen.
Did you see Rosenstein's testimony yesterday? I mean, this goes back to the point I was making about their narrative is crumbling in front of them. And one of the most profound things, and there's just so much that's come out of this, whether it was planned by the bad guys and hijacked by the good guys or not, or some variation thereof, I think it was a wonderful thing.
Mars goes retrograde in September, watch. And I can tell you this Mercury retrograde with this eclipse coming up in June, all kinds of stuff's going to start rolling out. We're going to see things really get crazy. And I think that's why another reason they're pulling out all stops. We are in a war right now. It's a war between globalism and nationalism. Mm-hmm. That's where it's at. They want a one world order where everybody's microchipped and square-eyed, responding to the frequencies in the new 5G, or they want nationalism. They want to keep capitalism. And I think George Carlin was right. Forget the politicians, you have owners. And we see the owners working through this. And I think we have a couple of factions here that are going on. And I think one is global communism, if you want to call that, or New World Order, or whatever names we want to put to it. But these forces, I think, have been at work for a long time. And I think they're going to lose. I think they're going to lose for now. What worries me is they may not lose in the future. Someday they're going to get some form of it.
Well, don't you think that the guys that are fighting or in front of this globalization New World Order group, at least in my opinion, at least from what I've seen, Trump is not a globalist, right?
Oh, definitely not. And definitely a nationalist.
And the military is not globalist either. One of the interesting analogies I heard
that people wouldn't have the military in a country if it was globalist. Not a chance.
One
and
of the
owners didn't just print 2.something trillion and more than that.
It's up to like 6. And here's a thought on that.
Insane.
The money that
had a set. He really did. He had a set up they gutted the U.S. military. They wanted Hillary in, and we would have been literally ready for a UN national system.
Complete takeover. Yep.
And I guarantee, if I never got in, it's exactly what would happen within a year and a half, 2 years. They'd have it set up that way. No, I think the owners want Trump in, and if they didn't, or at least a certain faction of the owners. And again, when I say the owners, I'm talking about the people way up at the top of the pyramid of the financial systems that will never know their names. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories. It's the Bilderbergers, it's the Rothschild. It may very well be some of them, but from what I'm seeing in the astrology, I have a more optimistic view. I think it's going to be a rocky road, but I think we're going to see major changes on this Saturn Jupiter conjunction that are going to be profound, profound. And I think, Tech, you can actually see it here in this chart. You can actually see Saturn and Jupiter are joining. There's a cool app. If anybody ever wants to get it, it's called Skyview, and you can actually see the planets in the sky, literally right where they are. It's all GPS. And you can actually see Saturn and Jupiter look like they're sitting on top of one another right now. And they're both retrograde. See, Saturn goes direct in September. Jupiter goes direct in the, let's see, Jupiter goes direct in September 14th of this year, and Saturn will go direct September 30th. And isn't that interesting? That's very, very close. Mars will go retrograde again. When is that? September 9th. So you're going to see this fall is going to be bizarre. All kinds of stuff is going to start happening. I think we're going to see a really heated battle between Trump. I got to say, it's going to take a tanker truck and at least 6 IVs to get Biden to beat Trump in a debate.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to implant. They're going to have to implant an artificial intelligence chip just to get him to be able to motate and get up on a stage.
I mean, and I don't care who they get for. I've heard all kinds of rumors that Michelle Obama is going to be put in, but I don't know. I'm not buying that one. I could be wrong. But
I put my little Spideys out and try to see, get a sense of what's going on. And I think that they're going to stay with Biden. They're going to try to stumble across. It's going to be the VP person. And I think it's leaning more towards Harris than any of the rest of the field. But I got to tell you, when you make statements like Biden does, and even the Democratic Party, that representative splintered group of cacophony of libs and progressives and even the moderate Dems, I mean, they don't know who they are anymore. And I actually think that as the result of the last 4 years, the obviously what Rosenstein and what's going on in the Senate right now, I mean, what he said yesterday, I mean, there's no coverage on all of the traditional left-leaning media outlets about what he said. And he said, because he was asked directly by Lindsey Graham, if you had this information today, back then, what would you do? Because I wouldn't have signed any of those FISA warrants. It's like, okay, so what you're saying is you spent 3 years and hundreds of millions of dollars and locked up the government from getting anything done because you didn't have all the information, and the information you did have that you found out just now was wrong, when you could have looked at it back then and made that same call. So the point of that is that that's just a glaring example of how the entire narrative of what this dark side has been riding a cycle on.
Have you ever been in litigation before, Robert?
No.
I've been around litigation a lot of my life. I wish I hadn't been, but I used to do forensics work, and I used to sit in federal court testifying as a professional witness. And I have seen attorneys bend things around, out and out lie, and yet they can't be prosecuted for it because they'll lie in such a way where there's ambiguity. Can't nail it down. And this is exactly what we're seeing. I've seen these in court cases where the only couple of times I've not used astrology explicitly, I've always run into issues in business deals. So that's why I now never will enter into another deal unless the astrology using electional astrology is exactly correct. I entered into one deal back in the 90s, and it was horrendous. And I did one not too long ago, and it didn't work out well either. And I forgot to use the astrology. And it's interesting that you have to say karma has to come through sometimes.
Yes.
But anyways, I can tell you, I think we're going to see Trump get back in, even though it looks like they got him on the ropes right now and they're punching him. But Trump is strong. What I will say is the United States is coming into some very rough waters here over the next couple of years. And I'm going to tell you, they're going to continue to try and tear down the walls of Jericho, and they will. They'll keep hammering away. They'll never stop. But I really think we're seeing a decoupling from China, which is colossal. And that debt that they hold, combined with, because you can already see it. Why do you think Trump went to India? Why do you think they're pulling out and other Southeast Asia countries are coming in? We're going to see automated manufacturing come back here. And I really think Trump has his uncle who confiscated all of the Tesla
right.
technology. And I can tell you, Tesla, I think, figured out the dielectric divisions between atomic energy. And we've heard of cold fusion and other types of things out there, perpetual motion machines. I think he had it figured out, and I think they've got cold fusion. I think there are alternative energies that have been suppressed for a long, long time that are going to be pulled out. And that's what this Saturn-Jupiter conjunction means at the end of this year. I'm optimistic, even though, yeah, we have a rocky road. In some ways, I like it because people are beginning to see, everyone I talk to, they're all beginning to see, wow, this is just a big propaganda narrative. It's not what they're telling us.
I think that's one of the most, I think it's one of the most profound and positive things that's come out of the failure of this coronavirus. Meaning that all of the experts, top to bottom, from the WHO to the CDC to Fauci, everybody who has been placed on the pedestal of being a quote-unquote expert, failed miserably. The models failed, the math failed, the men failed, the machines failed. And I think that people, it was failed in a spectacularly public fashion. So I think that
they're not going to admit to that, but yes.
Well,
they back behind the science, behind the this and behind the that.
they can try to hide and obfuscate as much as they want. The data is far too widely available and all over the place.
It is. So every doctor I've spoken to has said, Jeff, this is not correct. This data. They said there's no way that the numbers match what they're matching. And again, we'll never see any real prosecution of Como for sending people into the very place that they're most vulnerable. And who's better to equip COVID-19 or any pandemic? A hospital facility or a nursing home? I mean, does anyone stop and think about that? The rationality behind that?
Well, it's spectacular failure across the board.
So angry about their parents and their.
Oh yeah.
They're upset about it.
The failure has been spectacular, and it's been public. And what's happened as a result of that is people have started to rethink. I mean, you had to go, when you were told to go to your room and be quiet, you had to contemplate your navel length. You had to, hopefully people took advantage of the fact that you had this time that you've never had before. You've never been, unless you've done a staycation, I guess is what they call them, or if you're one of the introverts or preppers who has their own gig, likes their own space, likes to keep people out of it. Most people
have seen the propaganda. Yep, they're seeing it. I actually heard that the rioters, not only the COVID, but also the propaganda on the rioters, they have got instructions. There's cars pulling up with incendiaries, lighter fluid, bricks, rocks, hammers, and they come in with tactical teams. They'll come in on like electric scooters, those little stand-up scooters, and they'll know right where the cops are, and they're on radio. This whole thing has been very coordinated. And a lot of people were upset about that situation, which
that was just a catalyst to leverage their own emotional and intellectual issues and immaturity.
If you read the Saul Lewinsky playbook, you would say that this is exactly what this is. But Robert,
now here,
I have to get running here because I'm looking at the clock. I got to run. But we should pick this up more
Yes,
because we could tie this into the other cycles that are coming up later this year. I'm going to be doing a lot more work on the astrology to see what trigger points are coming in. I haven't really looked at the vice president thing yet, because now we're getting, I think we're going to see things really be redirected and refocused as we get into the latter part of this month. It's going to be pretty cool.
I agree. Now, this before we end here, let me just take a
Yeah.
couple of minutes. I want to add this to your knowledge stack, and when we get back to having more on this, let me share my screen, and I want to get your take on this. This is something that you and I both, being connoisseurs of all the different frequencies that are available, including remote viewing. This is by Edward Reardon, who's a phenomenal remote viewer, and he just put this out a few days ago from a reading that he did, I think it was 2 years ago, but just listen to what he says here, and we'll pick it up on another show.
You'll have to go and become a crypto viewing subscriber in order
Do you have
to
audio?
see that. This is from April 14th of this year. Here I am again. A pressing of the Earth's electromagnetic field like a warp. A strange element of forces here, altering timelines, restructuring timelines. This is where we may be being affected. There is something within this flux that can change a person's mind, affect the human brain. I'm not going to go any more into that. You'll have to check it out on crypto viewing. But that is a possibility of what is happening. Here's another one from the crypto viewing. Again, this is from April 13th or 14th, where the Earth's electromagnetic field is being altered and timelines are affecting time. This is the other element here that is very important about these sessions, is this idea that came through at the end of the session, 3 days of darkness, or 3 days of death, or 3 days of blindness.
Does he say when that's going to be?
Again, here we are, something is affecting
No,
our
he says
solar
that he
system
sees it coming, or
and
it's
flooding
going on
us
now.
with some type of
This is this is in April.
particles.
Yeah, the only way I
And
could help you
affecting
would be to cast
the planets.
irrigations on it. See whether or
Now,
not
this
it's true.
isn't
'Cause I get
woo-woo.
these all the
This
time
isn't
when there's
some
things happening. The
crazy
only way I can
conspiracy.
verify it, whether or not-
This is actually being detected. This is actually being detected. There's another article here that goes to some of the other sessions here. This came out May 4th.
I'll send you this link.
Fast radio
It's,
bursts could
14
be
minutes.
distant magnetars.
Some very
new evidence
fascinating
suggests.
information that he picked up.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Camille actually
This is the
told
interesting
me
part
all
here.
about this. Camille's
On
like
April
mine.
28th of this year, 2020,
Comes in with all the
two
cats.
radio telescopes spotted a new fast radio burst like pulse originating from a flaring magnetar located 30,000 light years away, putting it firmly within the Milky Way. And just a few days later, they detected another burst from the same nearby object.
About this, yeah. Yep.
Takes me
The
back to the
keys
Earth's
is what they're
core.
going to really do. You know.
Yeah, what I found interesting was there is, I mean, we've got a number of different devices in telemetry where we're picking up all this new data that there's new satellites that have gone up, new instrumentation that are looking in different frequencies, or at least have better ability to dive into these frequencies. What Edward's looking at here is a remote viewing session. He had a blind target, and this data started coming in. And it has to do with the Earth and the energy coming from the cosmos. And we have got our scientists that are saying We are in a galactic wave right now that is affecting all kinds of things. So, from an astrological, astronomical perspective, the cycles that are within the cycles are getting a bump. I mean, there's other stuff besides the
Oh, it's
cycles.
complex. It's
And,
complex.
so we've got the retrogrades and the eclipses, but we've
Right.
also got inbound asteroids and energy
Oh,
waves
yeah.
that are
Well,
coming
we
in.
always get retrogrades and we always get eclipses. The key is where are the big cycles that are making it more intense, like right now. Again, the
Right,
Saturn
right.
Pluto conjunction, Saturn Jupiter, those are what's really doing it. And I find this stuff goes on all the time. Like there's always been pulses, there's been, grand solar minimums, there's grand solar peaks, and all kinds of pulses and sunspots that are always going on, and they certainly have an influence. The only thing I can say is that the interrogation astrology seems to hold water, meaning when someone, because I get this all the time from clients, like, is the world ending? We're going to get this, we're going to get that. And I'll just cast a chart. And what's interesting is the astrology is pretty much based on fixed stars and the solar system, and also the rotation of the earth, which is interrogation astrology. And it seems to really be accurate in terms of, because I get this all the time where, oh my God, some phenomena is this going to happen? And
Well,
I think right now that this whole thing with the riots are going to start to subdue. I think we're going to see all kinds of political stuff come out of it. But on the other hand, I think it's going to back off. I think we're going to now turn our sights towards getting the country back open and
do
starting
you
to see things.
do you think we're going to have a resurgent reopening of the economy where it's going to go gangbusters?
I think it's going to come back. Yeah, I do. And I hope that's true. Let me cast a chart on that really quick. Hang on a second here. Because I that's what I want to get back into now is really starting to look at what's ahead for us. Um, I hope we don't see any more insanity that's created by dystopiocratic forces.
I think the
It looks,
insane people are exposing themselves to the point
yeah,
where they're not.
they are.
I think the silent majority, like I mentioned earlier, is a bunch of traditionalists that they basically say, look, Constitution, follow the law, you're in. Okay, that's it. I don't care what your orientation,
There's really angry
genetic
people. People really
focus
seeing what's
is, or
going
any
on.
of that. If you do the Constitution, you follow the law, and you don't screw with anybody, you're in. And hey, we'll help you. And
I think
that's
we're going to
I
slowly
think we're going to
see.
see more of that.
Yeah, I agree. But I also think we're going to, according to the chart, I'm actually looking at an interrogation right now. I think we're going to start to see things slowly come back online and get back to moving. The COVID thing's not working. I mean, they're going to keep that narrative going, but I don't see this. I think things are going to start to come back on track. Now I think we're going to be focused on the election, and I think we're going to also see a lot of trouble coming through with. And this is probably going to go on past the election, but this whole situation with indictments, I think with Durham and Barr is going to keep on going. I hope Barr and Durham are checking sweeping the car and checking the brake lines. That's all I can say.
You know what's funny is I follow various people who do different type numerology, obviously some remote viewing, tarot, astrology, all of that, and it's interesting to see some of these people that are out there with thousands of followers casting cards, doing reads, doing different spreads, looking at the energy of the day, and doing some type of read, and they're all saying Barr's about to get kicked out, Trump's about to just abdicate the presidency and just walk away, and they are so convinced that what they're reading is correct.
I'm not
And
seeing.
I'm looking at it going, do you realize that your bias is filtering your read?
Well, see, that's why I like astrology. Astrology was referred to as the eagle. There's this old story called the eagle and the lark. The eagle, you gotta, one of the best things I like about ancient astrologers, when you told the king or the general to go to war and you were wrong, you didn't lose your pay or your clients, you lost your head. And I'm not saying it's better, but it's a more reliable, especially if you use the older techniques. You have to use logic combined with the cosmological output and what the chart is saying. If they don't line
Right.
up, something's not right. But I think we're going to see things come back to normalcy. But Robert, I got to run because I
All right, brother.
I have to be. But hey, it was great doing the show with you. I think we're going to start to see the riots at least go away, and I think we're going to start to see a turn here. But boy, it's going to be a boat ride this summer. Let's do another show soon, and I'll talk about what I think is happening this fall. I think this is going to be a historic roller coaster political ride unlike we've never seen before. I
Well-
remember in '68, you probably remember the Martin Luther King. I was out in
Oh, yeah.
Washington, D.C. We were just kids, but I remember that my grandfather worked for Secret Service in Washington, D.C. And I don't know what he did, he wouldn't tell us, but I know he was a police officer before that. And he took us to the edge of the town, and we were watching buses roll over, buildings just on fire, and TVs flying through the air. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And this kind of reminds me of right now. People are very easily agitated, and this is what just happened. The astrology was right on.
I think some of that agitation was, from being under sequestration or quarantine. People,
Yeah.
there was a lot of pent up energy, but it was hijacked and it was piggybacked and it was utilized. And unfortunately, I don't think the people realize this. I think the BLM and the Antifa completely blew an unbelievable opportunity to get people to help and work and agree, because at the end of the day, and this is one of those many things that just doesn't make any sense, kind of like everybody went and hoarded toilet paper for a respiratory illness. It's like, what? What's going on? Well, the same thing happened in my opinion, with these riots and BLM and Antifa. BLM and Antifa really aren't the same. They're kind of separate groups, but the majority of them are pushing for this black narrative. Well, they could have, everybody agreed that what happened was wrong. It was heinous. It needed to be addressed.
Really, absolutely.
But instead of saying, okay, we all come together and figure out how to fix this, they went out and they screwed the pooch by BLM marching peacefully, Antifa coming in and making a mess.
A lot
And
of
now
police
they're all
officers were
conflated together,
Yeah.
and they lost an opportunity that it could take years to recover from the bad image that's coming out of these riots for the black community. And I'm sorry to say that, but it just logically looks on the
Well,
surface
a lot of them were white
like that.
doing. A lot of them were white in Antifa doing all this. They were leading.
Well,
the whole
yeah, they're
thing.
the agitators, but where are the black leaders? Where are the people that on the left? Where's any kind of leadership coming in and giving any kind of saying, all right, let's sit down and figure out a solution? If there's anybody saying it, they're giving it lip service, because there is no charisma, there is no personality, there is no oomph, there's no energy behind any one individual, a la like Trump has, to bring this thing together. But I wouldn't be surprised, because Trump keeps pulling rabbits out of the hat. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that pulls this together and fixes it in a way that nobody saw coming.
Yeah, it could happen. It leans in that direction.
So,
They think he's on the ropes, and they want to dance on his grave, but every time they do,
the man is, I mean, it's like he has got silicone all over him. Nothing sticks.
yeah, like Teflon. You bet. All right, bud. Good
All right,
to
my
do
friend.
this. All
Thank you
right.
very much.
You bet. Thank you.
We will connect. Let's connect over the next few days, and let's do part 2, part 3, and keep it
good.
going.
Sounds great. You got it. Bye.
All right, brother.